At noon Kiev time, Natalia Sopit is here in the studio for you. This is our time, and now I'll tell you the main news at this hour. Ukraine's defense forces have completely liberated and cleared the settlement of Besalivka in the Sumy region from Russian occupiers. This was reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. During the fighting, Ukrainian soldiers eliminated 18 invaders. Units from the 33rd Separate Assault Regiment and the 24th Separate Assault Battalion took part in the operation. 2 killed and 5 wounded. Russia is attacking peaceful cities in the Donetsk region. 11 settlements came under fire. The invaders dropped a half-ton guided bomb on Kostiantynivka and also struck the city with drones, NLRS, and artillery. 10 apartment buildings, 7 private houses, and an educational institution were damaged. The aggressors struck Sloviansk with a KAB-250 bomb and 4 Garand-2 UAVs. 6 private houses and a non-residential building were partially destroyed. The aggressor shelled Dreshkivka with a Smerch MLRS. 2 apartment buildings and 2 private houses, as well as educational institutions, were damaged. Early in the morning, the Russian occupiers carried out 2 strikes on Dreshkivka. On August 9th alone, the police recorded more than 3,000 Russian shellings along the front line and in residential areas. A total of 54 civilian objects were damaged, including 28 residential buildings. Russian forces attacked the railway station in Senelnykove, Dnipropetrovsk region. Train traffic has been temporarily suspended. According to Ukrzaliznytsia, all station employees were evacuated in advance, so there are no casualties among the staff. In the morning, work began to restore the damaged infrastructure. 2 private houses were also damaged. Fires broke out at several locations. Preliminary reports indicate there are no dead or injured. On the night of August 10th, Russia launched 100 drones of various types at Ukraine. Air defense forces neutralized 70 UAVs in the north and east of the country, according to the Ukrainian Air Force. The attack was carried out from several directions: Shatalovo, Kursk, Primorsko-Akhtarsk, and Gvardiskoy in temporarily occupied Crimea. Russia is deliberately killing civilians in Ukraine, said Dmytro Lubinets, the Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights. This is especially true in frontline areas, where FPV drones reach and multiple rocket launch systems can strike. These are serious crimes prohibited by international humanitarian law, particularly the Geneva Conventions, the Ombudsman emphasized. How Russia is destroying the lives of the civilian population of Ukraine, in our article.
There, on the bus, there's another guy. Quiet. Ouch. Lie down, lie down.
This is a video from the body cameras of the police officers who were the first to come to the aid of the bus passengers. Saturday, August 9th, Kherson region. A bus carrying civilians was attacked twice by Russian drones. Inside the bus, there are shards of glass, blood, and scattered belongings. There were 28 passengers, 16 of them wounded, and 2 died on the spot.
Over 70, people like me, and well over 70. Everyone was well over 70, people like me, and over 70. We were going to our dachas. We'd been going since April. Everything was fine. We always turned here and drove this way. But this time, I got scared. A drone was hovering. I thought, now I'll have to hide, to run. A soldier told me they don't hit buses like that. Well, they just don't hit like that. It struck from above. It followed me for a while. Apparently, it was deciding whether to strike or not. It struck once, then immediately a second time. The passengers jumped out of the bus in an instant and hit the ground.
When the police arrived to help the wounded, the Russians attacked the bus again with an FPV drone. 3 law enforcement officers suffered concussions. The driver managed to leave the scene on his own in the damaged bus.
This is what's left. Someone was bringing food and water for the dogs. See who I was taking with me? With blood pressure pills.
This isn't the first time the Russian army has deliberately attacked civilian transport. On the morning of April 23rd, a Russian FPV drone struck a bus carrying workers from one of the enterprises in Marinets, Dnipropetrovsk region. At that time, more than 50 people were injured and 9 were killed. Russia continues to shell peaceful Ukrainian cities, despite Kremlin statements about being ready for negotiations to end the war. On the evening of August 6th, Russian troops shelled a residential area in Nikopol with heavy artillery. 2 civilians were killed. Rescuers who arrived at the scene of the shelling came under a second attack, resulting in the death of a 23-year-old employee of the State Emergency Service. 4 more people were injured. And these are shots from Mazova, a town bordering the Donetsk region. Here, as a result of the shelling, a 5-story building caught fire. Russia is deliberately destroying life in the territories temporarily occupied by the Russian army. This week, Putin publicly mentioned for the first time the humanitarian catastrophe in the occupied part of the Donetsk region. The head of the occupation administration, Denis Pushilin, reported to the Russian dictator at a meeting that due to shortages, water is supplied to various cities in the region only once every 2 days for a few hours. According to local residents, people in Donetsk see water in their taps once every 3 days, and even then, it doesn't reach the upper floors.
Since 2022, water has been supplied according to a schedule. At first, it was once every 2 days, but since July 2025, it's been once every 3 days. In the heat, without reserves, this is a direct threat. The water is often dirty, but it's classified as drinking water, while clean water is used for industry. A similar disaster is happening in the Kherson region. After the destruction of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant, thousands of people were left without drinking water, and the region was hit by an environmental catastrophe. Dmytro Lubinets, the Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights, on Telegram.
Experts warn that without water in winter, people in the territories temporarily occupied by Russia could also be left without heating. According to Dmytro Lubinets, Ukraine systematically informs the UN, the International Committee of the Red Cross, the OSCE, and the Council of Europe about numerous violations committed by Russia. The Ombudsman is convinced that Moscow must face the harshest punishment for crimes against humanity. Natalia Husova for Freedom TV channel. Pawns.
Every concession provokes further Russian aggression, so Moscow must not be given any rewards in an attempt to appease it. This was stated by Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha. He noted that only strength can force Russia to stop its war against Ukraine.
That is why Ukraine firmly stands by its principles and values. We remain committed to ensuring a just and lasting peace based on the UN Charter and international law, together with our partners from the US and Europe. Andriy Sybiha, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, on social network X.
At a crossroads ahead of a planned meeting with dictator Putin, US President Donald Trump found himself facing a choice. He can follow the path of former British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and stand up to the aggressor, or act like Churchill's predecessor Neville Chamberlain and sign a deceptive deal in an attempt to appease the aggressor. This was stated by Megan Mops, daughter of the US President's Special Representative for Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg, and head of the R.T. Weiserman Foundation for Humanitarian Aid.
You cannot trade another country's sovereignty for the illusion of stability. His choice will determine not only the fate of Ukraine, but also the future security of the United States and the free world. Megan Mops, head of the R.T. Weiserman Foundation for Humanitarian Aid, on social network X.
The end of the war in Ukraine must be fair. This was stated by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, commenting on the joint statement of European leaders. He noted that Ukraine values and fully supports the statements of the European leaders. Let me remind you, the President of France, the Prime Ministers of Italy, Poland, and the United Kingdom, the Chancellor of Germany, as well as the President of the European Commission and the President of Finland made a joint statement ahead of the meeting between US President Donald Trump and the Russian dictator Putin. They emphasized their confidence that only active diplomacy, support for Kiev, and pressure on Putin can bring an end to the Russian Federation's war against Ukraine.
We share the belief that a diplomatic solution must protect the vital security interests of Ukraine and Europe. We agree that these vital interests include the need for strong and reliable security guarantees that will enable Ukraine to effectively defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Ukraine has the right to freely choose its own future. Meaningful negotiations are only possible under conditions of a ceasefire or a reduction in the intensity of hostilities. The issue of peace in Ukraine cannot be decided without Ukraine's participation. We remain committed to the principle that international borders must not be changed by force. The current front line should serve as the starting point for negotiations. We emphasize our unwavering commitment to the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of Ukraine. From the joint statement of European leaders on the issue of peace in Ukraine,